In the heart of Havana, a city alive with the rhythm of salsa music and the vibrant colors of crumbling colonial buildings, a shadow lurked, unseen yet palpable. The year was 2016, when a group of American diplomats stationed in Cuba began to experience a series of alarming and bewildering symptoms. At first, it was just a few. A piercing headache that seemed to come out of nowhere, a sudden ringing in the ears that wouldn't fade, a disorienting wave that washed over them, leaving them feeling lost in their own minds. These symptoms, initially dismissed as stress or fatigue, soon morphed into something far more sinister. As the sun set over the Malecón, casting a golden hue over the waves crashing against the seawall, those who had once thrived in the city's intoxicating atmosphere found themselves grappling with an invisible threat. The sounds they described were peculiar, strange, high-pitched noises that echoed in their minds, often accompanied by a sense of pressure, as if their heads were being squeezed in a vice. What was happening? Why were these seemingly healthy individuals suddenly afflicted by such debilitating conditions? The questions echoed through the halls of the U.S. Embassy, reverberating off the walls like the distant sounds of music that filled the streets outside. As reports of these mysterious ailments spread, the U.S. government took notice. Military and medical experts were dispatched to Havana to investigate what was soon dubbed Havana Syndrome. Theories began to swirl like the smoke from a Cuban cigar. Was it a case of mass psychogenic illness, a psychological phenomenon where a group of people experiences similar symptoms without a clear physical cause? Or was there something more insidious at play, an attack using advanced sonic weaponry, a covert operation designed to destabilize the U.S. presence in Cuba? In the midst of this unfolding enigma were the diplomats and their families, individuals whose lives had been transformed overnight. One of them was Mark, a seasoned diplomat who had spent years navigating the complexities of U.S.-Cuba relations. He had always prided himself on his resilience, but when the headaches began, followed by the disorienting sounds, his world unraveled. Mark recalled a night when he and his wife, Sarah, were enjoying a quiet dinner at home. Suddenly, a high-pitched noise pierced the air, and he felt as though the ground had shifted beneath him. He gripped the table, trying to steady himself, but the sensation was overwhelming. Sarah looked at him, her eyes wide with fear, and he knew in that moment that they were not alone in this struggle. As the symptoms spread among their colleagues, so did the fear. Families began to pull back, hesitant to engage in social events or even venture out into the city they once adored. The vibrant streets of Havana, filled with laughter and music, now felt like a labyrinth of uncertainty. For many, the joy of living abroad was overshadowed by the anxiety of the unknown. The diplomatic community, once a tight-knit group, began to fracture under the weight of suspicion and paranoia. Who could they trust? Was it safe to remain in Havana? The backdrop of Cuba's complex political landscape added another layer to the mystery. The island had long been a focal point of U.S. foreign policy, a remnant of Cold War tensions that still simmered beneath the surface. The thaw in relations between the two countries had brought hope, but also vulnerability. Would someone exploit this opening? The thought haunted Mark as he navigated the diplomatic corridors, wondering if the very ground he walked on was being monitored, if they were being targeted for reasons beyond their comprehension. As the investigation unfolded, local stories began to emerge, adding a human element to the growing crisis. Maria, a Cuban doctor, had been following the reports with a mix of disbelief and concern. She had treated many of the diplomats and their families, witnessing firsthand the toll the mysterious afflictions took on their lives. They were always so vibrant, full of energy, she recalled, but then, one by one, I saw them change. It was like watching a light dim. Maria felt a deep sense of empathy for her patients, torn between her duty as a physician and her loyalty to her country. She began to wonder if there was a connection between the symptoms experienced by the diplomats and the long history of health issues faced by the Cuban people, a legacy of economic hardship and environmental challenges. As the months passed, the theories surrounding Havana syndrome continued to evolve. Some scientists posited that the symptoms could be linked to exposure to toxins, perhaps from pesticides or chemicals used in the area. Others suggested that the stress of living in a politically charged environment could trigger psychological responses, manifesting in the physical ailments reported. But as more cases emerged, the specter of technological warfare loomed larger. Reports of similar symptoms began to surface from U.S. embassies in other countries, including China and Russia, raising alarms about the possibility of a coordinated attack. The implications of these discoveries were profound, sending shockwaves through diplomatic circles and beyond. The notion that American diplomats could be targeted with sophisticated weaponry was unsettling, a reminder of the darker aspects of international relations. For Mark and his colleagues, the fear was palpable. They were not just representatives of their country, they were pawns in a game that was far beyond their control. The stress took its toll, fracturing relationships, sparking anxiety, and creating an atmosphere of distrust that permeated their daily lives. In the midst of this turmoil, the U.S. government struggled to respond effectively. As investigations continued, officials grappled with how to address the growing concerns of their diplomatic staff. Statements were issued, reassurances provided, but the reality on the ground was starkly different. Families were left to navigate their fears alone, often in silence, as the world outside continued to spin. Mark found himself in a constant state of vigilance, his senses heightened, searching for any sign of danger. The once vibrant city now felt like a maze of potential threats. Each corner turned a reminder of the uncertainty that loomed. While the investigation unfolded, the personal stories of those affected began to intertwine with the broader narrative of Havana syndrome. Sarah, Mark's wife, found solace in connecting with other families who had experienced similar symptoms. They formed a support group, sharing their fears and frustrations, seeking answers together. "It was comforting to know we weren't alone," she said. "But the questions kept coming. What was happening to us? Why were we being targeted?" The group became a lifeline, a space where they could express their fears without judgment, a sanctuary amidst the chaos. As time went on, the quest for answers took on a life of its own. Scientists and researchers delved into the mystery, conducting studies and analyzing data, trying to piece together the puzzle. Conferences were held, findings presented, and yet the truth remained elusive. Theories proliferated, each more outlandish than the last. Some suggested that the symptoms were the result of a secretive government experiment gone awry, while others speculated about the role of foreign adversaries seeking to destabilize the U.S. presence in the region. Amidst the cacophony of speculation, the voices of those affected remained central to the narrative. Each individual story added depth to the crisis, transforming abstract theories into lived experiences. There was John, a young diplomat who had just begun his career, full of ambition and dreams, now grappling with the debilitating effects of the syndrome. He recalled a moment of clarity amidst the chaos, sitting in a cafe and listening to the sounds of the city, the laughter, the music, the chatter. "It was beautiful," he said, "but it felt like a distant memory. I was trapped in my own mind, unable to connect with the world around me." As the investigation continued, the implications of Havana syndrome extended beyond individual lives. The diplomatic community faced a reckoning, grappling with the reality that their safety could no longer be taken for granted. The bonds of trust that had been forged over years of cooperation were tested, as suspicion crept into every interaction. Mark found himself questioning even the simplest of gestures. A friendly smile, a casual conversation. Was it genuine, or was there something more sinister at play? The political landscape surrounding Havana syndrome was equally charged. As the U.S. government sought to address the crisis, Cuba found itself in a precarious position. The island had long been a symbol of resistance against American imperialism, and the emergence of Havana syndrome threatened to derail the fragile progress made in U.S.-Cuba relations. Cuban officials denied any involvement, asserting that the symptoms were the result of stress or psychological factors. A narrative that did little to quell the fears of American diplomats. The tension escalated, with each new case further complicating the already fraught relationship. Diplomatic expulsions followed, investigations intensified, and the dialogue between the two nations became increasingly strained. Mark watched as the delicate threads of diplomacy unraveled, each incident a reminder of the precarious balance that existed. The hope for a new chapter in U.S.-Cuba relations felt like a distant dream, overshadowed by the specter of an invisible threat. As the years passed, the search for answers continued, but the truth remained elusive. The narrative of Havana Syndrome evolved, shaped by the personal stories of those affected and the broader context of international relations. Scientists and diplomats alike found themselves caught in a web of uncertainty, navigating a landscape marked by fear and suspicion. For Mark, the weight of the unknown was heavy, a constant reminder of the fragility of their lives. In the end, Havana Syndrome became more than just a series of symptoms. It was a reflection of the complexities of human experience, a haunting tale that encapsulated the profound unanswered questions at the heart of the mystery. As the sun set over Havana, casting long shadows across the streets, the echoes of the past lingered, a reminder that the truth, much like the city itself, remained shrouded in layers of history and uncertainty. The search for clarity amidst chaos continued, a journey marked by resilience, hope, and the enduring quest for understanding in a world that often defies explanation.